Hi, Nelimar.
Hello ma'am, good evening po.
Palid ng prayer ha. Thank you, Nelimar.
Sige po ma'am. Mapagpala at makapangyarihan po namin Diyos. Kami po ay nagpapasalamat sa iyo ng maraming marami sapagkat sa kabila ng aming pinagkabalahan sa maghapong ito, ay ikaw po ang nagligtas sa amin. Nagpapasalamat kami Ama sapagkat kami po ay tinipon. Magkakaiba man po ang lugar na aming kinalalagyan. Ngunit sa pamamagitan po ng teknolohiya, kami po ay pinagsama-sama upang muling makapag-aral sa gagawin po namin pagre-review. Naway basbasan po ang bawat isa sa amin. Ikaw po sanang magbukas sa aming puso't kaisipan upang malinaw po naming malaman ang dapat po naming malaman para sa aming exam. Maging basbasan din po maging ang aming mentor. Sana'y may bahaging maliwanag ang aming pag-aaralan upang malinaw po naming maintindihan at ang aming pag-aaralan. Ito po ang aming hiling Ama, sa ngalan po ng aming Panginoong Hesus, dakila po naming tagapagligtas. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Nelimar. Are you a pastor, Nelimar?
Hindi po ma'am, hindi po.
What a beautiful prayer. Thank you for that. So let me now share my screen so that I can proceed with our. I will just continue the history aspect to complete it. So I'll start in. Okay. Then are you seeing now my screen?
Yes po, ma'am.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah, I gave introduction on Newtown's movement last time. I haven't checked yet your two mock exams, but I will soon check it. I mean to see who top, and then but that's not it's just some pre mock exams anyway. We will soon have a longer one. So to continue, but I already gave this as introduction last time, and it's Newtown's movement from 1920 to 1950s. Okay, so this is actually, or this was actually a response to the overcongestion in Le Corbusier's skyscraper cities, particularly New York City and Toronto, Canada. So it means that this has emerged as a direct response to the failures of high density, high rise radiant city movement or models championed by Le Corbusier. So planners saw the problems of congestion, alienation, and inefficient transport in rapidly urbanizing cities like New York and Toronto. And then it began to look elsewhere for solutions. So there were key ideas and principles. So there are still key ideas and principles. It pursued Garden City ideas of Ebenezer Howard. So please don't forget that one, which they believe could produce better community. So it was deeply influenced by Ebenezer Howard's Garden City concept. So instead of endless gridiron street patterns and unbroken blocks of tenements, planners envisioned communities as islands of green. Islands of green. So what did I say before? That islands of green means that neighborhoods centered on open space with green corridors linking homes, parks, and workplaces. So another core feature was the separation of pedestrian traffic from motor traffic or from vehicular traffic, aiming to create safer, more humane environments for daily life. So instead of scattered urban growth, new towns were built as planned entities, often from the ground up, with residential superblocks. So this is a series of superblocks or neighborhood. So please try to remember That's super blocks could also mean neighborhood cluster around greens. So that's how super blocks were characterized under this movement. So there so there are 6 principles of new towns movement. Plan simply but comprehensively. So the goal was to design complete communities from the start, not just to react to piecemeal urban growth. Provide ample size in the right places for community use. Again, I would like you to be very familiarized with the 6 principles of New Towns movement, so that when you encounter them during your board exams, it would be a no-brainer for you. Okay, so parks. Okay, parks, schools, shops, and civic buildings were deliberately placed within easy reach of homes, supporting daily needs and minimizing travel. So that's why it said here, put factories and other industrial buildings where they can be used without wasteful transportation of people and goods. So what else? There's also early recognition that cars, if not managed, would choke residential life, hence provisions for off-street parking. And that's why it said here, cars must be parked and stored, not on the streets. Then bring private and public land into relationship. It simply means synergy, building synergy between public and private land. That's bringing together both public and private land, and uh, it because when you do that, it ensures balanced development and access to amenities. Arrange for the occupancy of houses. So housing was arranged to serve different family sizes and incomes, aiming to foster um, social mix and stability. So the New Towns movement led to the creation of dozens of new settlements across the UK, Europe, and eventually elsewhere, including the Philippines, where government-sponsored what are those? People's Homesite and Housing Corporation developments drew directly from these ideas. So compared to earlier models, these communities generally offered higher quality of life, also better green space access, and reduce the negative effects of car dependency. So, okay, this one, Radburn, New Jersey. Okay, Radburn, planned in 1929 by Clarence Stein. Okay, by Clarence Stein. So, and Henry Wright, so dalawa sila. Maybe you can see this later here. Okay. Um, let me, Clarence Stein and Henry Wright. Right. Okay. So this duo planned Radburn. Okay. It's a landmark actually. It's a landmark in the history of suburban planning. Created as a town for the motor age, Radburn introduced several groundbreaking ideas that still influence urban design today. So there's the super block layout. Instead of traditional street grids, Radburn's neighborhoods are arranged in super blocks. So can you see this one? They're arranged in super blocks, means large car-free areas for housing and parks surrounded by limited access roads. So this allows for internal green spaces that are safe from traffic. Also, another ideas or characteristics of the Radburn design was that the most innovative aspect was the complete separation of pedestrian paths from automobile roads, so residents could walk from their homes to parks to schools and shops without ever crossing a street. So underpasses and walkways made this possible, setting a new standard for safety and livability. But of course, there would be some explanation later. So I just want you to imagine new towns or Radburn itself, that Radburn's plan emphasized also communal open space. Then houses face inward. So let's just check this one if there are some so that you can imagine them. But this was in the US and Greenbelt, Maryland. But we are talking about Radburn because for sure, parang every year yata, they ask about, okay, so what's the character of Radburn and who designed Radburn, parang ganon. Because this is one of the, models within New Towns movement. So, although the Great Depression, the Great Depression era halted its full development, Radburn became a model for post-war American suburbs and influenced public housing, new towns in the UK, and planning policies worldwide. So Radburn demonstrated that residential neighborhoods could be designed for both cars and people without letting cars dominate daily life. So its legacy is seen in traffic calmed subdivisions. Do you know traffic calming? And then cul-de-sacs as well, and every master plan suburb that values walkability and community green space. So, so that's the map of Radburn, New Jersey. So just showing the separation of between motor traffic and pedestrian traffic. So here, you see the plan for Radburn, New Jersey. So again, who designed? Can someone unmute? Who designed Radburn?
Clarence Stein
It's
and
Clarence
Henry
State
Wright.
and Henry Wright.
Clarence Stein, and you're right.
Great. Okay, wag niyang kalimutan yan. Okay, so the diagram shows the innovative separation of cars and pedestrians in the interest of safety. Okay, so the red and blue are the red and blue lines here. Okay, represent the distinct paths. The blue is for motor traffic, while the red is for pedestrian traffic. So here, it's just a more detailed map that you can identify the shopping center, then apartment groups, school, and park space. So all connected internally within the neighborhood without the need to cross major roads. So it's famous. Why we are even talking about it as mas madami nang naplano as of today, di ba? Mas madami na. But Radburn is famous for being one of the first communities in the world to fully separate pedestrian circulation from vehicular traffic. Okay, that's the concept itself. And the main roads here, the blue one here, are designed to skirt around the residential super blocks, providing access only to the edges. Then meanwhile, all homes and community amenities are internally connected by a dedicated system of pedestrian walkways. So that's what you see kasi hindi natin makita talaga ito. So, kita ninyo itong space na to. Okay. So those are dedicated system of pedestrian walkways never intersect with the main road. Okay. So please mute. Jen, please mute. Mute. Okay, please mute them. So this design has several technical advantages. Safety, because children and residents can walk to parks, schools, and shops without ever encountering cars, greatly reducing the risk of accidents. Another advantage was during that time because footpaths run through shared green spaces, so residents are more likely to interact, encouraging a sense of community. So I hope you get that concept. Another advantage during that time was that the super block concept clusters home around shared open space. Rather than along traffic heavy roads. So this maximizes both usable green space and the quality of the public realm or environment. So Radburn's system anticipated many planning concepts we now consider standard for walkable neighborhoods. Its innovations later influenced public housing, new towns in the UK, and even modern subdivision regulations. However, it's important also to note that while the separation improved pedestrian safety, it also created a kind of banal sterility. Do you know that in later suburban models, as many subsequent development imitated Radburn's layout without the same attention to community life and um, mixed land uses. So in summary, Radburn demonstrates how urban design can be used to prioritize safety, community, and access to green spaces by physically separating pedestrian and vehicular movement. So that was one of the most important legacies of suburban planning. Okay, suburb. Also, it continued. I mentioned earlier about banal sterility. It refers to a criticism of how the Radburn model and similar suburban designs can sometimes lead to neighborhoods that feel dull, monotonous, and lacking in vibrancy or character. Banal means ordinary, unremarkable, or lacking originality. So when planners or critics say a place suffers from banal sterility, they mean that despite being safe or well organized, the area can feel uninteresting. So, yun lang yun. Overly uniform, like some subdivisions that we have, diba? Same lang yung itsura, mga ganon. And it also means devoid of the lively, unpredictable qualities that make urban neighborhoods feel genuine and engaging. So there may be plenty of green space and well-separated traffic, but without a mix of uses, like wala siyang ibang amenities, like diverse architecture and opportunities for spontaneous social interaction. The environment can feel empty, of emptiness of or boring, or sometimes yung mga overly dramatic people, they call it soulless. Okay, so new towns here in the US and Greenbelt, Maryland, in 1937 to 39. Here it emerged. So it drew from the principles of the British Garden City movement. The idea was to address urban congestion and poor living conditions by developing entirely new communities that were planned from scratch. Do you know someone can unmute? Ano yung when you say you're planning from scratch? Do you know? Pati ako nakalimutan ko. Ano was it a Latin? Hindi naman Latin word yung tinatanong ko, but when you plan from scratch, meaning walang development all over, and And so what's the terminology? And you let me know. If someone remembers, and you can just raise your hand, and Jen will call you, and then I will allow you to speak out. Okay. So Greenbelt, Maryland was one of the earliest examples in the US. So this federally funded project was designed during the New Deal era under President Franklin Roosevelt. So Greenbelt was envisioned as a model town intended to demonstrate how good planning could improve quality of life and foster a sense of community. So the planning of Greenbelt included features such as a clear separation of pedestrian and vehicular roads to enhance safety and accessibility. Another feature is the use of super blocks with housing units organized around communal green spaces. Another one is that community facilities, schools, and shops were centrally located to encourage walking and social interaction. And then another feature is that the development incorporated cooperative ownership models and emphasized affordable quality housing for working class families. So Greenbelt, along with they call it sister projects or related projects in Green Hills, Ohio, and then Greendale, Wisconsin. What else? They all exemplify the new town's approach, prioritizing open space, community center design, and plan layouts over the random sprawl and congestion of traditional city growth. So, in summary, the new towns movement and Greenbelt, Maryland represent early attempts in American planning history to create healthier, more balanced, and socially cohesive communities through comprehensive design. These are the principles that continue to influence planning practice today. Frank Lloyd Wright is very interesting because he was considered he was a major U.S. architect deeply involved in site planning and community planning with 41 commissions, 532 designs, and over 1,000 drawings. So his influence extended beyond architecture to urban theory. So Wright was a major proponent of urban decentralization. So it's also a reaction to the congestion and density of US cities. He promoted the idea of spreading out development across the landscape. So some even called him an eco-anarchist for his radical views against centralized compact cities. Okay, so Wright's vision materialized in his proposal for Broadacre City. It was a design concept that stands as a forerunner of the ultimate expression of suburbanization. Broadacre City was essentially the antithesis of compact development and transit-oriented development, the TOD. So instead of concentrating people and activities, he imagined dispersing them. So please remember that, with each family living on its own plot of land, relying primarily on the automobile. So that's why I said there, most activities are automobile dependent. So here we are again with some technical aspect or characteristics that in the Broadacre city design, settlements would cover about 10 square kilometers or 1,000 hectares, containing all the services and amenities of a small city: schools, museums, markets, offices, trains, as well as farms and factories. So homes would be distributed such that such that every family could have 1 acre each. 1 acre is 4,050 square meters provided from federal land reserves. So there would also be sufficient space for gardens and small farms, and notably, he even imagined residents having a helicopter for personal transportation. So this helicopter idea made Broadacre sound almost like a science fiction, but it reflects Wright's forward-thinking approach to mobility. Okay. Um, Wright also developed neighborhood designs such as the quadruple block plan. Okay, you can see that. Here, houses are set on small square blocks, each divided into four equal four equal lots, and surrounded on all sides by rows. Can you imagine the type? Okay. So what else about this one? It's it intends to, or houses were placed towards the center of the block, maximizing yard space and creating a private communal center. Does it sound familiar to you? Or so are houses designed based on Frank Lloyd Wright's concepts? So I'm not sure if you can imagine very well the way in the same manner that I explained it to you tonight. So again, I will repeat that houses were placed towards the center of the block, maximizing yard space and creating a private communal center. So this layout offered more interesting views for each house compared to the typical grid pattern and reduced monotonous straight rows of homes with little privacy. So the key concept here of the Broadacre City is that um, so I mean much activity in Broadacre City is done by automobile, showing Wright's embrace of the car as essential to his vision. So this differs sharply from other planning models that prioritize mass transit and walkability. Wright's ideas were radical for his time, especially his belief that every family should have substantial land and autonomy. So the Broadacre model was a critique of urban crowding and early influence on American suburban development. However, it also raised question about sustainability, car dependence, and the feasibility of providing infrastructure and services to such a dispersed population. So again, the quadruple block plan is worth noting because it tries to solve the issues of privacy and monotony in residential design. Instead of traditional rows of houses, this plan offers shared internal spaces and unique views, which remain relevant concepts in neighborhood planning today. So those are the characteristics. Low density, because um, this means that land is distributed generously with each family occupying its own large lot. So typically 1 acre per household, car oriented because it revolves around automobile. That assuming he designed the city assuming that every household would have at least one car. Then freeways plus feeder roads means that the city's road network is based on a hierarchy, meaning major freeways for longer trips and feeder roads for access to individual lots and local destinations. So this system allows for efficient movement of cars between different zones while maintaining the separation of traffic types, helping to avoid congestion in residential areas. Multi-nucleated because instead of having a single urban core, Broadacre City is multi-nucleated, meaning it's composed of multiple centers or nuclei. So services, markets, workplaces, and community space are distributed throughout the landscape so residents can access what they need within their own cluster rather than traveling to a distant downtown. Another right, so you can, okay, Frank Lloyd Wright, so the Broadacre City, so you need to distinguish. How about Henry Wright? So magkamag-anak ba sila? I'm not sure. So Henry writes, he produced the report of the Commission in Housing and Regional Planning for the state of New York. He stipulated also the essential elements of a regional plan, meaning which became an important reference for later urban development projects in the US. Wright introduced the concept of super black in Newtown development in the US. So this was first implemented in Radburn, okay, Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Now the super block is a green island bordered. So I hope you can imagine very well that the super block is a green island bordered by homes and surrounded by peripheral roads for cars with generous open spaces and interconnected greenways that serve as safe pedestrian pathways. So the closest Philippine equivalent of super block is a medium-sized rectangular subdivision with gardens and abundant greenery. So that's what it means. And in this model, so again, so I think it's the third time I'm saying that instead of traditional street grids that mix cars and people everywhere, a super block organizes houses around parks or gardens. So So another, kanina, di ba? Clarence Stein. So Frank Lloyd Wright, Henry Wright. So you need already some system. Paano yung system ninyo on how to remember the names, ano? Because it's important so that you don't interchange the names. Especially so meron ka pa tayong ma-encounter later na names which are, you get to be it gets to be very confusing. So Clarence Stein, kasi may Clarence na naman mamaya. He co-founded Regional Planning Association of America with Henry Wright. Okay, and Louis Mumford. So ang ano niya is Henry Wright, not Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, and also Louis Mumford. So let me see the Clarence Stein. Just a moment. Okay. So, okay. He was the principal planner who pursued Ebenezer Howard's Garden City ideas in conceptualizing 22 government-sponsored new towns. So, baka lang you don't be confused about this one kasi we are still in new towns anyway. So, what are those that we can attribute to Clarenstein, so 22 government-sponsored new towns. So, okay, the Regional Planning Association of America, anyway, it brought together some of the era's most forward-thinking planners united by the aim of improving both city and regional development strategies. So, yeah, these were all the new towns that he he governed or he planned or he conceptualized. But there was also a mention about short-lived U.S. resettlement administration. So, baka lang tanungin din yan, ano? So these towns followed Howard's ideals, planned communities surrounded by green belts, offering a balance of residences, jobs, and open space. So the federal government backed these projects during the 1930s as part of the, okay, let me see the year. As part of a broader social and economic reform agenda, hoping to relieve urban congestion and offer healthier conditions. So efforts were cut short by the Great Depression. So this was the the economic crash of the 1930s meant that many projects lost funding or momentum before they could be fully realized. So still, Stein's ideas lived on. So he wrote the book New Towns for America in 1951, which was later inputted into the U.S. Housing Act of 1954. So this book codified many planning principles that would shape post-war suburban development. It helped influence federal housing and urban policy for years to come. So kanina, dalawang Henry Wright, apelido yung magkapareho. Here, Clarence Stein, and magkapareho ang first name naman, Clarence Perry. Okay, so magkakadikit sila, no? Clarence Perry, anyway, he conceptualized the neighborhood unit, which is the American equivalent of the UK's neighborhood precincts. So same lang yung first term, but the precincts, you have to be very to be very aware when we talk about precincts. So it's associated with UK. Okay, so that's the terminology that they use in the UK until today. So Perry's idea was to create a planning unit that brought community life, accessibility, and amenities into a single cohesive design. The neighborhood unit is described as a self-contained, low-rise, pedestrian-oriented residential quarter which incorporates garden city ideas. The neighborhood unit is bounded by major streets with shops at the intersections and a school in the middle. Please try to imagine that. Okay, the typical size would be around 0.272 square kilometer to 6.2 square kilometer, supporting 6,000 residents and a school for 920 children. But during my time, indeed, tinatanong ito, even this one. Yeah, so as early as now, you need to print this slide so that, kasi if you read that from the book, it would be more, at least ito na highlight na, no? So that each time you look into the one that you posted on your walls, some people would print everything, they paste it. Anyway, 1 year lang naman, di ba? Na magstay sa wall mo. And some are yung mga low ceiling, ganyan, malalakas ang mata. And they pause everywhere so that when they wake up, they see all these materials, and then when they retire to bed, they still see it until they wake up. So it's a natural um familiarization. You don't need, hindi kay walang effort, ano? You wake up, okay, you see it. And then when you tutulog ka ulit, yun pa rin nakikita mo, di ba? So it's really sacrifice to memorize. And so that's the highest so far that I saw in history. I think I already mentioned earlier, 93%. Okay, if you can defeat this one, that would be good. That's, you can be assured, 20% kasi yung history and theory. So kailangan ito muna yung assure mo. Kasi at least for the planning processes, it's like a day-to-day event in your planning life or planning review. And then the lows, it's also like a day-to-day planning review. Like you encounter them. It's just a normal daily reading, but for the history and theory, it's not normal na yun ang ginagawa mo, di ba? So if you can assure that 80%, madali na lang. Madali na lang buuin itong 80%. So I advise no, history and theory mo na yung inyong asikasuhin. Okay? Because you can put that in your back, at your back, and then proceed with the, more or like a regular read, parang ganun. Okay, so Perry, so I hope you will remember this, okay? Again, ulitin ko. The neighborhood unit, 1920, is described as a self-contained, that's number one, low-rise, pedestrian-oriented residential quarter which incorporates Carleton City ideas. So, madali ko lang matandaan. So, over the years, like I started memorizing this when I was at SARP. Just imagine 1996. Di ba? 1996 ko pa yun memoryado up to 1998, and then parang normal lang. So even nakapikit, you know what had Clarence Perry conceptualized in his neighborhood unit. Idea. Okay. So the neighborhood unit is bounded by, again, major streets. Okay, can you imagine now? So with shops at the intersections in a school in the middle. Is it difficult? So the typical size would be around 0.272 square kilometer to 6.2 square kilometer, or 620 hectares, supporting 6,000 residents in a school for 920 children. I'm not sure bakit ganun, ano. So Perry intended his neighborhood unit to satisfy most needs of residents and bring advantages of traditional small town living into the city. So he saw the unit as a way to blend the benefits of close-knit communities with urban amenities, giving city dwellers a sense of belonging and safety. So he formalized this vision in the 6 principles of neighborhood. So size to support an elementary school with a radius of about half a mile. Okay, strengthen your imagination. Bounded on all sides by arterial streets, because, okay, what I'm trying to say is, because you don't have, next time, tomorrow will be another topic. Tomorrow will be another day, another topic, another encounter, or another set of reading materials. So take advantage of this evening that you have the chance to familiarize already. Okay, if you have a system on how to do, kasi kakaiba kasi kakaiba yung style natin. Some people are good at, yung pag tinitignan nila, and they can already they can already memorize. And some people are good at, listening, and some are good at imagination, some are good at many things. Pag lahat good kayo, and I don't think there should be a reason for you not to become ENP. Okay, so provides open space for parks and recreation, occupying about 10% of the area. Parang ano lang din, udha or something. So 10%, pero sa atin ilang percent na yung open space natin. So groups, institutions like schools, community centers, and churches around Central Point. Locates shops at the perimeter near traffic junctions. Then features an internal street system with cul-de-sacs and narrow roads to facilitate local access and discourage through traffic. So, by using these principles, Perry's neighborhood unit formula became the basis for countless suburban developments and remains influential in urban design today. So his approach helped planners think more holistically about walkability, access to schools, green spaces, and the importance of community institutions within neighborhoods. So that's Clarence Perry. We will, because I have a class at 9 p.m. So it's not a review class, but it's a formal class. So regional planning movement for tomorrow, I would like you to be very familiarized kasi yung so yung 20%, mostly regional planning theories, regional planning movement. Ang daming lumabas ng 2025, even 2024, even 2023 board exam. So they really concentrated on regional planning movement. So this will be tomorrow for maganda yung kay Patrick Guedes. So he's known to be the father of regional planning. Okay, kaya yung course sa SARP is School of Urban and Regional Planning. And also the degrees, they included regional planning. Because it's a very important element. We're not just planning for a city, but for the region as well. So, okay, that would be all for tonight. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Jen, what time tomorrow do you think? Just a moment. Tingnan ko lang, stop ko lang. No? So, okay.